नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्ति भवति नैष्टिकी। निगमकल्पतरोर्गलितं फलं शुकमुखादमृतद्रवसंयुतं पिबत भागवतं रसमालयम् मुहुरहो रसिका भुवि भावुकाः। ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्तांश्च नमामि विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामीनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधो दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधा कान्त नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभयश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरं। हरि ओम तत्सत्। Hare Krishna. So we welcome all of you for today's session. We will continue with our 26th chapter where we had left yesterday. I also would like to state, yesterday I believe Shobhamai Mataji had sent a message regarding seeking for a break, but I had not seen the message, so I had not responded. I please beg forgiveness for that. And
Hare
I would suggest, Mataji, whenever you need to have a break, you're most welcome. You please take it, whether I purposefully make it a point to stay to you or not. You're most welcome to do that. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Wonderful.
So today we will see on this chapter. So we are here in the Vedas. Yesterday we did up to 26 verses through the slides, and I felt that there are a few verses which are very interesting to have a look at. So we will take a look into that. Text 20 states, Vishwam Atmagatam Vyanjan Kutasto Jagad Ankuraha Swa Tejasa Pibhat Tibram Atma Prasavapanam Tamaha. So the word specifically used is Prasavapanam. The word Prasavapanam refers to which had covered the Mahatattva. Prashvapanam. After manifesting variegatedness, the effulgent Mahatattva, which contains all the universes within itself, which is the root of all cosmic manifestations and which is not destroyed at the time of annihilation, swallows the darkness that covered the effulgence at the time of dissolution. What exactly does this mean? Yeah, Srila Prabhupada mentions at this point. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is ever existing, all blissful and full of knowledge, his different energies are also ever existing in the dormant stage. That means they're not brought in together or put into action. Thus, when the Mahatattva was created, it manifested the material ego and swallowed up the darkness which covered the cosmic manifestation at the time of dissolution. So this means the creation is actually, in one sense here, uh, in the perspective of Lord Mahavishnu, it's a continuous process. So at the time of dissolution, the whole creation appears to be in darkness at the time of dissolution. But at the time of creation, there is illumination. And the illumination, the reason for that is the appearance of Mahatattva. And also, in the previous verse, there's a very nice explanation given. What is this uh, Mahatattva? Daivat Kshubitha Dharminyam Swasyam Yono Parahman Adhatta Viryam Sasuta Mahatattvam Hiranmayam. So this Mahatattva, the sum total of the cosmic intelligence, is also known as Hiranmaya. After the Supreme Personality of Godhead impregnates material nature with his internal potency, which yesterday we saw, what does this mean? Material nature delivers the sum total of the cosmic intelligence, which is known as Hiranmaya. So after the impregnation and during the process of gestation, what grows into the womb of Yonir Mahat Brahma is Mahat Tattva, which is also referred to as cosmic intelligence. Why is it referred as cosmic intelligence? Because everything that is needed for the creation, sustenance, maintenance, and as well as annihilation for a particular universe or universes together is all the result of the intelligence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that intelligent potency transforms into Mahatattva. And that's what is also referred to as Hiranmaya, which is also meaning the golden egg. Here Prabhupada mentions an interesting point. This impregnation of material nature is described in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 14, chapter verse 3. Material nature's primal factor is the Mahatattva, or breeding source of all varieties. This part of material nature, which is called Pradhana, as well as Brahman, is impregnated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this part of material nature refers to the Yonir Mahat Brahma, and within that Mahat Brahma is the ingredient cause, which is called as Pradhana, and which is also called as Yonir Mahat Brahman. And that, after being impregnated by the Godhead, it delivers varieties of living entities. Material nature in this connection is called Brahman because it is perverted reflection of the spiritual nature. So perverted reflection of the spiritual nature, the spiritual nature is called as Brahman, which is in pure goodness. Yesterday we also discussed about that Vishuddha Sattva or the Vasudeva Sattva. That nature is called as spiritual nature. But when there is a need for creation, and when Mahatattva is released uh, by the Supreme Lord with the will of the Supreme Lord for the purpose of creation, then that is referred here as perverted reflection. Why it is called as perverted reflection? So, when the purpose of the material creation is not for the sake of the service of the Lord, but then for the sake of the enjoyment provision made by the Lord for the living entities, then it is called as perverted reflection. Because the original reflection is to serve the Lord. And whereas when that service nature is covered, then it's called as perverted reflection. It is described in the Vishnu Purana that living entities belong to the spiritual nature, but they have chosen to be part of a material nature to enjoy. Therefore, it's called as perverted reflection. That is not their original position. So the potency of the Supreme Lord is spiritual. That means the living entities are called as the potency of the Supreme Lord. And the living entities, although they are called marginal potency, are also spiritual. If the living entities were not spiritual, this description of impregnation by the Supreme Lord would not be applicable. The Supreme Lord does not put his semen into that which is not spiritual. But it's stated here that the Supreme Person puts his semen into the material nature. This means that the living entities are spiritual by nature. After impregnation, material nature delivers all kinds of living entities who become perverted, beginning from the greatest living creature, Lord Brahma, down to the insignificant ant in all varieties of form. Form refers to the rupa of the living entities in different kinds of yonis or in different kinds of bodies. In Bhagavad Gita, material nature is clearly mentioned as Sarva Yonishu, means the origin of all or the breeding ground for all kinds of species. This means that of all varieties of species, such as demigods, human beings, animals, birds, beasts, whatever is manifested means which has a form. Material nature is the mother, and the Supreme Godhead, personality of Godhead, is the seed-giving father. Generally, it is experienced that the father gives life to the child, but the mother gives its body. Although the seed of the life is given by the father, the body develops within the womb of the mother. Similarly, the spiritual living entities are impregnated into the womb of the material nature, but the body being supplied by the material nature, that is through pradhana, which is called as mahatattva when there is a manifestation, takes on many different species and forms of life. The theory that the symptoms of life are manifest by the interaction of 24 material elements is not supported here. The living force comes directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is completely spiritual. Therefore, no material scientific advancement can produce life. The living force comes from the spiritual world and has nothing to do with the interaction of the material elements. It's a very important philosophical point to talk about what exactly is creation. Then we see how the transformations actually take place. The mode of goodness, which is clear, sober status of understanding of the personality of Godhead, and which is generally called Vasudeva or consciousness, becomes manifest in the Mahatattva. This is needed because for the purpose of creation, as I told you, as the Lord creates, He also simultaneously makes the provision for those surrendered souls to come back to Him. And for that process and for making that to be realized, there should be within the creation a facility where they can realize and come back. And that arrangement is done through this Vasudeva manifestation. And it's also called as Shuddha Sattva. In the Shuddha Sattva status, there is no infringement of other qualities, namely passion and ignorance. Remember, all of these things are happening within the womb of the material nature. And this Vasudeva Tattva is also become manifest in the Mahat Tattva. So that's another aspect to be seen. Manifest in the Mahat Tattva means after the material ingredients have been placed inside the womb, Mahad Yonir, then by the will of the Lord, those things which requires to get arranged will also start to manifest within the womb. In the Vedic literature, there is mention of the Lord's expansions of the four personalities of Godhead, Vasudeva, Shankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Here, in the reappearance, means they are eternally in the spiritual world, but in the material world, when there is a need for these provisions, because Vasudeva, Shankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, they are the central deities for the senses. Vasudeva for consciousness, Shankarshana for ignorance, Pradyumna for passion, and Aniruddha is also referred here for the mind, basically. Here in the reappearance of Mahatattva, the four expansions of God occur. He who is seated within as Supersoul expands first as Vasudeva. So, these Supersoul of the universe is Garbhodaka Sai Vishnu. And the Supersoul of all the universes combined together within the material creation or within the material realm is Mahavishnu. But then the respective roles that they would be taking place. And this Vasudeva, here as is referred to as the Super Soul, refers to Kshirodaka Sai Vishnu. The Vasudeva stage is free from infringement by material desires and is the status in which one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead or the objective which is described in the Bhagavad Gita as Adbhuta. This is another feature of the Mahatattva. The Vasudeva expansion is also called Krishna consciousness. If there is no provision for Krishna consciousness within the material world, then how can devotees or how can people become devotees? So therefore, that which is the supermost is also available within the material nature, and that which is the most degraded are also available in the material nature. This clear state of understanding helps one to know the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Vasudeva status is also explained in the Bhagavad Gita as Kshetragna, means the knower of the field, which is also referring to the super soul, which refers to the knower of the field of activity, also the super knower, that is the super soul, Paramatma. The living being who has occupied a particular type of body knows that body, but the super knower, Vasudeva, knows not only a particular type of body, but also the field of activities in all the different varieties of bodies. So he's the common personality in the bodies of all different species. In order to be situated in clear consciousness or Krishna consciousness, one must worship Vasudeva or the super soul. And this is why in the process of Ashtanga Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and even in Bhakti Yoga, as we say, now we started our class with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. What is the reason for that? So that the super soul within our bodies, he hears that we are praying for his blessings and deliverance. Because the super soul is the nearest agent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead for every living entity. Just like for any help for anyone requires when they are dealing with the government, there is a representation of the government in some way or the other, some place or the other, who help. Similarly, for the living entity within the body, there is this super soul, who is also referred here as Vasudeva. Vasudeva is Krishna alone. When Krishna or Vishnu is alone, without the accompaniment of his internal energy, he is Vasudeva. So please very carefully read the purport and take every single note of this. So because he is Vasudeva and he is within the living entity's body, and there is no internal potency next to him, there is no temple where you worship the super soul. The only temple, because for receiving worship, Krishna's internal potency is necessary. She is the one who inspires us. So within the super soul, there's also very nice understanding here. Without the accompaniment of his internal energy. When he is accompanied by his internal potency, he is called Dwarakadisha. To have clear consciousness or Krishna consciousness, one has to worship Vasudeva. It is also explained in the Bhagavad Gita that after many, many births, Bahunam Janmanamante, Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate, Vasudeva Sarvamiti, Sa Mahatma Sudurlubaha. In order to get release from the false ego. So we understood why we worship Vasudeva. And then, in order to get release from the false ego, one has to worship Shankarshana. Shankarshana is also worshipped through Lord Shiva. The snakes which cover the body of Lord Shiva are representations of Shankarshana. And the Lord Shiva is always absorbed in meditation upon Shankarshana. One who is actually worshipper of Lord Shiva as a devotee of Shankarshana can be released from false material ego. If one wants to get free from mental disturbances, one has to worship Aniruddha. For this purpose, worship of the moon planet is also recommended in the Vedic literature. Similarly, to be fixed in one's intelligence, one has to worship Pradyumna, who is reached through the worship of Brahma. These matters are explained in the Vedic literature. How did you find this purport?
Very confusing, Prabhuji.
Very confusing?
Prabhuji,
That's right. We are not
actually,
doing any of the demigod worship, right, Prabhu? We are directly doing to Lord Krishna, not even Dwarkadish.
So what do you think is Prabhupada trying to explain here then? Why is he taking such a great effort to explain who they are, what they are? And why are you thinking that the word Lord Shiva is used here is a demigod, or Aniruddha, Pradyumna, or Vasudeva as demigods? Why do you think so?
Not them. Moon, Brahma,
Why?
Lord Moon.
Because, yeah. So what does this actually mean? We have hierarchy of authority. That's very important. The hierarchy of authority, if it's not respected, then the supreme authority would not actually consider you. You are not separately worshipping the moon planet in separate understanding from Krishna. You are worshipping the moon planet for what purpose? Because the moon planet influences the mind. The moon has been given this provision. Where are we? We are in this material world. within this material world, we are also being given these faculties. When we are given these faculties, we must understand the hierarchy of how the respect and how the worship gets carried. We are worshipping, we are, what do you call, taking shelter of the super soul. So who is the super soul? He is the representative of the Supreme Lord. Similarly, as we have the faculty of false ego, we have the faculty of, as what referred over here, is that of mind, then of intelligence. They are sense devatas. They are controlling them. You just cannot ignore them. You may not be, what you call, intentionally or purposefully worshipping them, but their presence and their, what you call, blessings is always there with you. Since you are worshipping Krishna, they become happy to enliven with full potency all the faculties that has been given. So we need to understand this. This is how the fundamental principles of material nature is created. When we understand this and relate them with respect to Krishna as authorities who take charge of our body, then the whole respect becomes very good and clean. Just like, for example, in the altar, you have Guru Parampara. And why do we actually should have a Guru Parampara when we have directly Radha and Krishna in the altar? Why should we have them? The Guru Parampara
That
is
I
there.
understood.
Yes, go ahead.
We understand that Guru represents all the demigods, Acharya, Mam, Nijaniyam. So that's why, because they instruct us, they take us to the Lord and how to do the Pancharatrika Vidhi and all the other processes.
Then do you think moon doesn't instruct? If that is the case, Krishna comes from the moon dynasty, Chandra Vamsha. Why does he choose?
Oh
Lord
no, no,
Sri Rama
Prabhuji,
comes from.
I'm not questioning. I'm not questioning the demigods, their place, the vibhuti. What I was thinking is when you were reading out the Srila Prabhupada purport, and I'm just thinking, okay, we're not praying neither of them. Okay, Brahma obviously because Brahma is a preceptor of our sampradaya, so we do Brahma Samhita prayers, for example. But moon, we're not using them. So, I mean, you explained it very nicely right now. Thank you.
So the worship of the moon planet is also recommended in the Vedic literature because Soma Rasa is available. When you actually read the Bhagavatam, the fifth canto, which you will do it in your next module, at that time, we all of you have definitely seen the moon, and you have seen how the moon different phases occurs. 15 days it's in brilliance, illuminated. Another 15 days it slowly gets darkened. Do you know why it's happening? We think, or rather we state that those times the sun's reflection is getting gradually reduced, and so the moon is, doesn't have an illumination. So we think moon just as an object. But here, even though it is referred here the worship of the moon planet, because Pitris stays there. Pitris stays in two places, one in the moon planet and one in Pitraloka. Those who stay in the Pitri planets, they also drink Somarasa. The brilliant side and the dark side of the moon are two sides. Moon is a spherical body. When the part which is brilliant or which is illuminated is facing the sun, at that time, there is a party going on of all the demigods in the moon who are invited to take the Somarasa. And that goes on for 15 days. At the end of the 15 days, the Somarasa is exhausted. So the next 15 days, Soma manufactures, Pitris are engaged in the manufacturing of Somarasa. And that's Somarasa. Why do demigods take this as a party? Because moon is the planet which nourishes the vegetation. The demigods are different personalities who care for the plants, for the trees, for the herbs, for the medicines. They are taking care. And so they are nourished with this nectar. and they in turn nourish all this vegetation. So moon is so important. Therefore, his worship. We may not be directly requiring to worship the moon separately from Krishna. If we are worshipping Krishna, all of them are completely satisfied. But those who have not yet developed that moon, they do worship moon. And for that purpose, there must be an arrangement. As stated in the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 3.9 and 3.10, if you see, Krishna says that at the beginning of the creation, the Prajapati, he sent forth all the demigods along with the method for sacrifices. So Karmakandiya, Vedic methods are also part of creation. Just like Jnana Yoga of creation, Ashtanga Yoga is a part of creation, Bhakti Yoga is a part of creation. If all these faculties and facilities are not there, how can we sit together and discuss on this subject matter? So therefore, we're talking of the fundamental principles, how creation is established. Then we can appreciate every inch of this. And when we appreciate this, then our respect to Krishna, seeing what a magnanimous personality is he, that he has created everything with such great details, then one can actually appreciate and become more and more Krishna conscious. That is what the purpose is. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing in that point. Yes, Shobhamayi Mata.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So some Pitris they stay in moon and some Pitris they go to Pitraloka. So those who did pious work, not pious, punya, they go to moon. Is it like that?
The right now what is going on is from beginning today is Mahalaya
Yes.
period, 15 days of Pitru Paksha.
Yes.
So in this 15 days of Pitru Paksha, the destinations of these two people are also a little different. In the sense, those who worship the forefathers according to the Vedic rituals, they get eligible to go to the Pitraloka, not exactly the forefathers. Forefathers are worshipped by the residents here in this Bhuloka. They get the opportunity. They reserve their place to go to Pitraloka. That is the provision. It's not that the Pitrus are going there. Since they go to this after doing the Pitrupaksha worship, they are called as Pitris. Suppose our parents have been worshipping their forefathers. So they get the opportunity. Who? Our fathers, they get the opportunity to enter into Pitraloka. It's automatically done. If you follow the Pitrupaksha, you follow the Shraddha ceremonies, then you are getting this rightful claim after you leave the body to enter into Pitraloka. That is the provision. But those Pitris, they themselves may not be qualified, to whom you are actually worshipping, or for whom's sake you are actually doing it. They may not be actually eligible. They may not be qualified, but you become qualified. So therefore, the Vedic ritual states that everyone has to perform this so that their forefathers are pleased, so that in whichever lokas they may be, in their different destinations, they get their feed. Do you know how we are actually getting our feed every single day? Don't think that you are actually working in the kitchen and getting your food done, therefore you are getting the feed. This is not the process at all. The process is pretty clear. Even you would have cooked your food, many days you would still go starving. You know why? Because, yes, it's a very
Shraddha
important fact.
ceremony, we have
Yeah.
to. Through the
So
media of crow, they take. Is it like that?
the crow is a representation. That's not actually how this whole thing is to be understood. Crow is a representation because the first destination of it, though I'm a little deviating from this subject since it is interesting, I
Yes.
wanted to share with you.
Yes.
The first destination of a soul is soon after his leaving the material body is called as Kakaloka. Kakaloka is a place where crows reside. This is a subtle place, not visible to your eyes. But when you offer, I don't know how many of you have actually seen in a place where this Pindadan is going on, there are hundreds and thousands of crows come in.
Yes.
And these crows, they specifically pick up that Pinda which you have offered. Someone neighboring has put another offering there, it doesn't pick it up. Crows have this great sense. So who are they? They are the agents of Yamaraj. And each of them have a representation. Each soul is represented with a particular crow. And that crow comes down to pick up the Shraddha what has been given for that particular person in the name. And then when it actually carries that, it carries it subtly and offers this to that soul, stating that your dependents, your son or your whoever has done, has offered this to you. Why is it done? So that the soul who's traveling on his way to the Yamaloka, there are 13 days of celebrations for those who are in the upper order of the social society. For them, there is 13 days. And for those who are Vaishyas, for them it is Vaishyas and Sudras, it is 21 days and 30 days respectively. So the Shraddha ceremonies goes on for that many long time. During this period, there are various destinations the soul has to cross by. And around the 10th day, they call it as Vaikuntha Samaradhana. Or the 10th day is the time when the soul, by the power of the, the performance of those who are dependents, and that's of the prayers of the priests who perform them, they can make the arrangement for the soul. Instead of gliding towards the Yamaloka, they can actually divert their chariot towards Vishnuloka. That's the power and the ability.
Even if they
So
don't
therefore,
perform devotional service, they can direct.
yes, because through Karmakanda, there is a provision for that. But what does that actually mean? It actually means that a soul gets an opportunity in future to enter into Vishnuloka. But then again, it will come back to this Bhuloka and will take the form of a human being and enter into the body of a devotee's house. That's how the journeys are. Karmakandi activities directs and tells in this way. So for those who follow that, they have to worship moon, they have to worship all others. That's how the procedure is. So if these procedures are not existing, then how can the creation be? Not everybody is devotees. Not everybody. We also did not become devotees. I mean, at least I did not become devotee from the birth. So I was also following some karma kanda, and later on I took into the Krishna consciousness.
Yes.
So that's
And
how the
Prabhuji,
whole
one more
arrangements are.
question. One more, this is not relevant to today's topic. And this, the Narakalokas are the below the Patala Loka. Is it like that?
Near the region of Patalaloka.
Okay.
Narakas, there are 26 Narakalokas, not one. They're all region put together. Just like we call the 7 states in the Emirates as UAE, or about 8 to 10 states all around in the Middle East called as GCC. Likewise is called as Narakaloka.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Even
Hare Krishna.
Pitraloka is...
I have more questions. Thank you so much for
Yeah, yeah.
telling us about this moon concept. I've never heard it before. So beautiful, Prabhuji. Thank you. The waxing and waning of moon. I was going to say we follow the lunar calendar, we follow Ekadashi, the 11th day and all that, but interesting combination. Prabhuji, when you were talking about the Vasudeva concept, this is the first time I've heard. So you're saying Vasudeva in the form of Kshirodaksha Vishnu in our heart, there is no internal potency, and that's why we do not worship the super soul because the internal potency isn't there. What about the Ashtanga yogis who are meditating on the super soul? Isn't that considered, is that part of meditation not considered worship?
No, that's not worship. The word worship is not used there at all. It's only simply dhyana. Dhyana and dharana. There is no aradhana. Worship means aradhana. And
Okay.
the goal of the Ashtanga yogis is they just want to have the nearness of the super soul. They don't want to render service. There is no service there. But Madhyavadis, there is no service. They just only feel the nearness of the Lord. That's all. That's what's called as affinity.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for
So then in this verses 23, 24, an interesting transformations that takes place is referred. Mahatatvat vikurvana. Vikurvana means Vaikaras. Vaikaras means transformations into different things, what all it happens. Bhagavad Virya Sambhavat. So the Mahatattva gets transformed into varieties of manifestations because of the Bhagavad Virya Sambhavat. Means the powerful potency of the Supreme Lord is placed or it is made to interact. Kriya Shaktir Ahankaras Trividha Sampadyata. So this will begin in terms of Kriya Shakti. So Kriya Shakti means where there is potency for endowed with the active power. That's how the Lord empowers them. This is exactly called as empowerment. And because of that, Vaikarikas, Tejas, Vaikarika refers to goodness, Tejas refers to that of passion, and Tamasa, ignorance, Cha Yato Bhavaha. So this Mahatattva, after empowering the Ahankara for the purpose of creation, it interacts into three ways. And these three ways are that of mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. And the result of that is when the Ahankara interacts with Vaikarika, the result is Manas. When Ahankara interacts with Taijyasa, that is passion, the results are that of Buddhi, or here it is referred as Manasascha Indriyanam, and then Cha Bhutanam Mahatam Api. So what does this actually mean here? Let's read the translation. The material ego springs up from Mahatattva. This is what exactly is called as Bhagavat Virya Samabhavat, which evolved the Lord's own energy, that is Bhagavat Virya. The material ego is endowed predominantly with active power. This is called as the Virya of three kinds: good, passionate, and ignorant. So the false ego is reflected in these three modes. That's what exactly it means. In other words, to say, imagine false ego as a man and he has three wives. So with each of these wives, he has a affection. And because of this affection, there are different progeny that get generated by these three different modes. So what's that? If it is from these three types of material ego that the mind, the sense of perception, the organs of action, and the gross elements evolve. So in all of them, because it is the wife of false ego, which is the mode of goodness, and the children of the mode of goodness are the mind, the sense perception. The sense perception is also called as the sense objects. And then the organs of action. Organs of action means physically, what you see, hands, legs, and so on. And then the gross elements, that is, Bhumi, Rapo, Analo, Vayu, come. These are all coming from the first wife, who's called as mode of goodness, with her husband, false ego. So this is how you should try to put them in a way how these things are interacted. Because the Lord empowers the false ego. That means what? He makes, where is this false ego coming from? It's coming from Mahatattva. Where is the Mahatattva coming from? Mahatattva is evolved from the Pradhana. Where is Pradhana coming from? Pradhana is coming from the super intelligence of the Supreme Lord, who places them all in the womb of the material nature. So this is how the bodies are getting created. Let me just
Hare
see
Krishna
if
Prabhuji, I have a
something.
question. Sorry.
Yes.
Prabhuji, what I understood was that Mahatattva, the mind and the demigods are from the mode of goodness, but the working senses, knowledge acquiring senses are from passion, and gross elements from ignorance. Is that different understanding?
You are true, because in terms of the summation of that is explained by Prabhupada in this way. It is good, passionate, and ignorant. There are three wives. And then it says, that's what it says, that these three types of material ego, because just like how a wife is represented by the husband, similarly, the goodness, the mode of goodness with false ego, the mode of passion with false ego, the mode of ignorance with false ego are represented. And they are giving these three things: the mind from goodness, sense perception from passion, and the organs of action and the gross elements. You have to see that the sense perception, the organs of action, and the mind, these three are actually grouped as one. Whereas the gross elements, what you see here, is for the ignorance. So here, just like, for example, father is the same, he has three wives, and there are different children. So if someone is being introduced, what they would say, these are the children of this father, belonging to these women. That's how this translation is made.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Sorry. When you started these shlokas, my original question was something else. So the time was introduced as an ingredient previous to the Mahatattva shloka. So isn't time supposed to be an instigator? So when instigator of the gunas, so if in the pradhan form, the time enters and they instigate the gunas, instigating the gunas is further for creation of the ingredients, or instigating of gunas means prakriti?
No, there are stages, there are phases in which these things take place. For the sake of fusion of the various separated, that was referred as what it was referred as undifferentiated elements. For the sake of it to coming together, there is this time factor working. And then afterwards, who will interact with whom is also done by the agency of the time. So it's the time is present, and because the time is present, they become active, but then they have not started to interact. Again, it will further make this provision. So these definitions are put into in such places.
Crystal clear, Prabhu. Thank you.
Yeah. Here we can see some interesting point here. In the beginning, from clear consciousness or the pure state of Krishna consciousness, the first contamination sprang up. It's called false ego. That means Mahatattva was pure. So from Mahatattva comes the false ego. Why does the false ego come in? Because the very purpose of creation is the living entities have to separately enjoy from Krishna. Separately enjoy from Krishna means what? They should understand that they are Krishna and there is no other Krishna. That's called as separately. So therefore it says that is called first contamination, because they are principally going against the very purpose of creation. Therefore it is referred here as the first contamination. And that first contamination is referred here as false ego. So the very word that is called as ego means identification. False ego means falsely identifying that you which you are not. or identification of the body as the self. The living entity exists in the natural state of Krishna consciousness. So when he entered even into the womb of the Prakriti, he was not contaminated at the time. The Lord placed the conscious living entities in the womb, not contaminated. But his contamination will begin in the womb. That's what is important here. Okay? And that contamination is a covering. The contamination is not that the soul becomes contaminated. There is a contaminated coating for it. It is simply like the child sees that his father is, let us say, as a chief justice. So he wears his black coat, and after office he comes back from the home, hangs it on the hanger. Then the child, he wears the shoes of his father, then wears the coat of his father, comes into front of his father and says that I am the chief justice. This is what is happening here in the womb for the living entity. So the living entity exists in the natural state of Krishna consciousness. Even when the child was in the dress of his father, still he was pure. The dress had actually contaminated him to think other way. But he has marginal independence, and this allows him to forget Krishna. While he wears this dress, he forgets that he is son of Chief Justice. Originally, pure Krishna consciousness exists, but because of the misuse of marginal independence, there is a chance of forgetting Krishna. This is exhibited in actual life. There are many instances which someone acting in Krishna consciousness suddenly changes. In the Upanishad, it is therefore stated that the path of spiritual realization is just like the sharp edge of a razor. Kshurasya dhara is referred. The example is very appropriate. One shaves his cheeks with a sharp razor very nicely, but as soon as his attention is diverted from the activity, he immediately cuts his cheek because he mishandles the razor. Not only must one come to the stage of pure consciousness, but one must also be very careful. This is the reason why Bharata Maharaj fell down from his state of high elevated consciousness. Reason? Not being careful. In any inattentiveness or carelessness may cause fall down. This fall down is due to false ego. From the status of pure consciousness, the false ego is born because of misuse of independence. Misuse of independence means the choice that the living entity wants to say, I want to explore. Ishwaram aham bhogi. We cannot argue about why false ego arises from pure consciousness. So this is something which the Lord decides. You fellow, you had this tendency with you. So better go and clean up the tendency. That's how Krishna says. Factually, there is always the chance that this will happen. And therefore, Prabhupada uses a very careful word, factually. There is always a chance that this will happen. And therefore, one has to be very careful. False ego is the basic principle for all material activities. And therefore, the fundamental principle of material creation is based upon false ego. If there was no false ego, where is the necessity for Krishna to create a material world? As soon as one deviates from pure Krishna consciousness, he increases his entanglement in material reaction. And therefore, Krishna only makes a provision. The intensity of your desire to move away from Krishna more and more, then the goodness, passion, and ignorance keeps becoming more and more intensified. The entanglement of materialism is the material mind, and from this material mind, the senses and material organs become manifest. Therefore, I told here in this particular case that from the wife called as the goodness, the mind, the sense of perception, and the organs of action, they are all her children. They are all grouped together. Then Sahasra Shirsham Sakshad Yam Anantam Prachakshate Shankarshanakyam Purusham Bhutendriya Manomayam. The threefold Ahankara, the source of the gross elements, the senses and the mind, is identical with them because it is their cause. It is known by the name Shankarshana, who is directly Lord Ananta with 1,000 heads. So now we are talking about the deity of the senses, sense deity. Then Kartritvam, Karanatvam cha, Karyatvam cheti lakshanam, Shanta Ghora Vimudhatvam. Shanta refers to goodness, Ghora refers to that of passion, Vimudhatvam refers to that of ignorance. Iti va syat ahankrite. The false ego is characterized as the doer, as an instrument, and as an effect. Three places it is reflected. As the doer, therefore it's called as Kartrutvam, Karanatvam as the instrument, and effect, Karyatvam, as the final result. It is further characterized as serene, active, or dull according to how it is influenced by the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Just like the child, whether boy or girl, is actually, the body is the property of the mother. Is the property of the mother, but the soul is the property of the father. So this is a very interesting point to note. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 9th canto, there comes a discussion. It's a very interesting discussion. To whom the body belongs to? To whom the body belongs to? So, is it belongs to the guru? Is it belongs to the mother? Is it belongs to the land? Is it belongs to the spiritual master? Are all the questions coming up there. And there it is stated, if the soul has taken the shelter of a spiritual master, then the soul, because who takes shelter? The body doesn't take shelter. The soul takes shelter. So therefore, as long as that body is sustained by the soul, then the proprietor of that is the guru. But if he has not taken shelter of the spiritual master, then the proprietor is the mother. But if he is consciously serving that the very purpose of his creation is his father, then that property belongs to the father. This is the judgment given in the 9th canto. So it's very interesting to note here. So therefore, it is referred serene, active, or dull according to how it is influenced by the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Ahankara or false ego is transformed into the demigods, the controlling directors of the material affairs. As an instrument, the false ego is represented as different senses and sense organs because they are the main ways in which we actually function. So instrument is represented through senses and sense organs. And as a result, the combination of the demigods and the senses, material objects are produced. In the material world, we are producing so many things, and this is called advancement of civilization. But factually, the advancement of civilization is a manifestation of false ego. By false ego, all material things are produced as objects of enjoyment. One has to seize increasing artificial necessities in the form of material objects. Next verse. Vaikarikat vikurvannan manastattvam ajayata yat sankalpa vikalpabhyam vartate kama sambhava. So there is a subtle element created, and then there is a characteristics of the subtle element also is created. So the characteristic is more subtler than the subtle element itself. Suppose you can say, to someone we say that he has very good mind. So what exactly that we are telling that he has very good mind? Does we say that his mind is a 10 carat or 100 carat gold? What are we actually saying when we say that he has a good mind? Or when we say to someone he has a dull mind? So does it mean saying that only 5 grams of mind is existing? This is not a physical, what you call, measurement. it talks of the characteristics. Similarly, when we say is a very intelligent person, so what does that actually mean? Does he have a ton of intelligence? It simply doesn't mean in terms of measurement. It means in terms of the characteristics. So the characteristics are also created. Just like how the mind subtle element is created, the characteristic is also created. Another gross way of understanding, the earth element is created. Then the earth elements characteristics, the odor is created. The ability to smell. Therefore, we have Varahadeva, who smells the earth. This is very interesting to note. How everything is represented by the different potencies of the Lord. Why does the Lord come as Varahadeva to pick up the earth? Because earth has smell. And the best animal or the best body which has the capability to smell is the body of a hog. And therefore the Lord takes that particular form. So the demons are not afraid of someone, but the demons are afraid of a lion. Therefore the Lord appears as Narshingadeva to the demon Hiranyakashipu. And this demon Hiranyaksha was going behind the earth because he could smell gold in the earth. Therefore, the Lord comes as Hiranya, as Varaha, and kills this demon because he is unrightfully using or unrightfully claiming the proprietorship of that. So every lila, every pastime has a specific nature, and the Lord demonstrates that why he comes like this. So from the false ego of goodness, another transformation takes place. From this evolves the mind, whose thoughts and reflections give rise to desire. If its mind is only a 5 ounces mind and it doesn't do anything, then we would say that what kind of a mind is being created? It has to do something. So what does it do? It has thoughts. And then those thoughts become reflections, which is called as desire. Now, become a little analytical. And now you take up a thought. For example, you're sitting now in this class. What are you actually thinking? What are you actually thinking sitting in the class?
It's a difficult subject matter.
Yes. Someone is thinking when this class will be over. Someone is thinking, why at all is this class existing?
Roji, I was thinking that Brajvasis are so lucky they don't have to deal with these things. They can simply just deal with Krishna. So that was
Prabhu,
Love of Krishna is enough.
Prabhu, for to become a Vrajavasi, one has to go through this Sankhya Yoga billions and billions of lifetimes. Only then it precipitates into Krishna consciousness. The milk is boiled and boiled and boiled to become only cream, nothing else. That is the state of Vrajavasis. So therefore, milk cannot be simply compared to the cream. Cream is the essence of the milk. We can simply say, oh, they are so fortunate. They did not become fortunate so easily. So if we have that thought, then the reflection comes, when can I become such kind of a Vrajavasi? Then immediately the mind also tells, are you ready for the tapasya? Right? So the symptoms of the mind are determination and rejection. That's what is called here as the reflection gives rise to desire. So symptoms refers to its characteristics, which are due to different kinds of desires. And we desire that which is favorable to our sense gratification. So the mind is oriented to satisfy the senses. And the senses are oriented to be obedient to the mind. This is how their combination actually work. We desire that which is favorable to sense gratification. So the mind is being designed to give you favorable things. So the moment you take the japamala, the mind says, no, 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 stop it, stop it, stop it. Japamala is not for sense gratification. You are wrongly picking up things. Please drop it, please drop it. So therefore, when you are chanting, it will keep on giving you, you missed this, you missed this enjoyment, you missed this enjoyment. You're not meant for this. Why are you doing this? I am supposed to keep on giving you snoozing alarm to drop it, but you use it, you use what you call, you fool and rascal, you are picking up this japmala and disturbing me from serving you. This is what mind is telling, right? And then you simply say, my mind is not peaceful, Prabhu. Why can your mind be peaceful? Because mind is not designed to be peaceful. Its character is simply acceptation, accepting and rejection. So where is the question? Why do you blame your mind? Therefore, Krishna says, Srila Prabhupada says, where is the question of mind in chanting? Have you heard him saying this? He says this, where is the question of mind in chanting? Chanting has to be done, but you with your tongue and with your focus, with your intelligence. Why are you simply bringing your mind in it? Simply discipline it. That's what he says. So the material mind is not fixed, but the very same mind can be fixed. Manah Krishna niveshayat, yena kena prakarena, manah Krishna niveshayat. That is the instruction by Prahlada. When engaged in the activities of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, as long as the mind is on the material platform, it is hovering. And all this rejection and acceptance is asat, temporary. It is stated that he whose mind is not fixed in Krishna consciousness must hover between acceptance and rejection. This is very beautiful verse which says, Yasyasya bhaktir hare Yasyasya bhaktir
Bhagavatya kinchana.
Bhagavatya kinchana. And then it says, the third line. Third line says, Abhaktasya kuto mahatguna manorathena dhavati bahihi. So on the chariot of this mind, the soul drives so vigorously. So where is the question for him? Haro abhaktasya. Yasyasya bhakti bhagavatya kinchana. Sarvair gunair tatra samasate suraha. Suraha, one who is obedient to the Krishna. To him, all the gunas automatically come and reside. They come and serve him. But one who is not, one who is an abhakta of Hari, where is the question of any good qualifications? Because his mind is always running and running behind Bahihi, which is external. Therefore, how the mind can be trained or mind can be contaminated is explained. The mind of the living entity is known by the name of the Lord Aniruddha. So that's the title. So if I ask you, do you know who is Aniruddha? You say, it's not me. You will simply say, it's not me, someone else. But here, the Lord is stating, the mind of the living entity is known by the name Lord Aniruddha, the supreme ruler of the senses. He possesses a bluish-black form resembling a lotus flower growing in the autumn. He is found slowly by the yogis. So you're all very familiar that the super soul is sitting in the heart. So therefore, you're very confident. Sarvasya chaham hridisannivistah. You keep on saying this. But then you also have, all of you agree that you have some mind? Sorry, don't mind me saying this. Right? So what is the representation of the mind known as? Is known as Aniruddha. So therefore, Vasudeva is in consciousness. The Paramatma in the name of the super soul is within the heart. Consciousness is a subtle reflection of the false ego. It is its preliminary stage. Similarly, mind is a reflection. Mind is the sun of the goodness combined with the false ego, and that sun is named as Aniruddha. This is how you have to see. So within the body of a living entity, where and all the Lord is sitting in his various representations, we began this chapter when Lord Kapila said, this is how I'm going to explain to you the various, the very first verse says, the various aspects of the absolute truth. That was the first verse that we read. So what are we reading is the mind is an aspect of absolute truth. And as an absolute truth, so I will just push through straight to the first verse. You can see that very clearly mentioned here. The personality of Godhead Kapila continued, my dear mother, now I shall describe unto you the different categories of the absolute truth. So mind is one of the category of the absolute truth. And therefore, that mind, which is category, is referred as Aniruddha. Is that clear? Why we have to study this part? The yoga system entails controlling the mind, and the lord of the mind is Aniruddha. It is stated that Aniruddha is four-handed, just like his father is four-handed, who is Vasudeva. He is also four-handed, with Sudarshana Chakra, conch shell, club, and lotus flower. There are 24 forms of Vishnu, each differently named. Among these 24 forms, Shankarshana, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and Vasudeva are depicted very nicely in Chaitanya Charitamrita, especially in the Madhya Leela, in the Chaitanya, in the Rupa Sanatana Siksha, between chapters 19 and 20, where it is stated that Aniruddha is worshipped by the yogis because they have to control deeply. Dhyana, dharana has to happen through the mind. Meditation upon voidness is a modern invention of the fertile brain of some speculator. This is how Srila Prabhupada glorifies a modern day meditator. He says something has gone very fertile in his brain. What is growing in fertility in his brain is voidness. This, when I read such type of statements, I simply fall at the feet of Srila Prabhupada, saying that, look at the way how he glorifies these persons. Actually, the process of yoga meditation as prescribed in this verse should be fixed upon the form of Aniruddha. By meditating on Aniruddha, one can become free from the agitation of acceptance and rejection. So this is how you can control your mind. So as we just started a verse back, as you are sitting here, what are your thoughts? If your thoughts has been an Aniruddha, then we can complete this chapter. If the thought is not an Aniruddha, then I don't know where we are going to do and land up. So please excuse me for that. Taijiyastu vikurvanat buddhitattvam abhut sati dravya spurana vignanam indriyanam anugraha. By transformation of the false ego in passion, that means false ego with his wife passion, intelligence takes birth. That's the children. O virtuous lady, he is now, Kapila is addressing his mother, and he tells a very beautiful comment about his mother. The functions of the intelligence are to help in ascertaining the nature of the objects when they come into view and to help the senses. He says, virtuous lady, because my mother, you are actually very intelligent. Why? Because you questioned about self-realization. So those who are intelligent can only question. Therefore, he says, you are a virtuous lady. Virtue is the characteristic of intelligence. So he uses a very nice word. Do you find anywhere sati? The word used is sati. Oh, my dear mother, virtuous lady. Okay.
Hare Krishna.
The perfection of, yes, mother.
In the false ego and this one, sattva guna is mind, and the false ego and the passion is buddhi, because buddhi is greater than mind, right? It should be the sattva guna. No, just I am asking how this mind is evolved from goodness and ahankara. And the buddhi is from false ego and passion.
It's a very common and general doubt for everyone. We go by the hierarchy thinking tamas, rajas, and sattva. And therefore, we think that the best part of a human body is intelligence. No. Actually, the best part is mind. How is that mind is important? Krishna says that, what do you say? Manmanamascha, manmanamanas, what is that? Manmana bhagava mad bhakta mad yaji mam namaskuru. Give me your mind. Krishna did not say buddhi mam. He did not say that. Give me your buddhi. That's the first point of
In one
understanding.
shloka, Krishna says that in 12th chapter. Mayeva
What he
mana
says?
May buddhim nivasasya mayeva ata urdhvam na samshay. He said,
Very
your mind
correct.
and intelligence, both you invest in me, like that. Yes.
Okay, I will go back to that verse and explain to you. He said, buddhi niveshayat. Buddhi requires engagement. Buddhi requires engagement. Wherever there is engagement, there must be passion. Because engagement means creation. In the kitchen, there is passion. In the kitchen, there is passion. In the temple room, there is peace, sattva. Therefore, you meditate in the temple room. Have you ever meditated sitting in the kitchen? So very clear. Mind is superseding. But in terms of explaining the hierarchy of the body, there we see what we see, the whole chariot as a body, the horses as the senses, the reins as the mind, and the controller of the reins is the intelligence, and the owner of the chariot is the soul. So we give the hierarchy Indriya, Mana, Buddhi, and then Atma. This is how we give the hierarchy. But the Buddhi requires mind for manipulation, for doing creation. Have you ever worked in the kitchen and created any dish with good intelligence where your mind was not there? Have you ever tried doing anything like this? With all your intelligence, you read your books, your best of your, the cookery books, and brought the best of your ingredients, but you have no mind to do the cooking. Can it work?
Tried and spoiled also.
So you said, I use all the good intelligence. Why is that it doesn't come? Because there is no mind. So what simply it means, mind, though in terms of hierarchy explained on this particular verses, states that it is lesser than the intelligence because it has a greater responsibility than the intelligence. Intelligence, okay, I will give you another work atmosphere for you to understand this hierarchy better, then you will actually appreciate. Have you ever been working or had any experience, or your husband's working in a companies where there are consultants and the contractors and clients? Have you come into any such kind of a experience?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Right? The client is the owner. Now you should say the client is the owner is equal to soul. The client is the owner, and he is referred to the soul. Next is buddhi. Buddhi is referred as or equivalent to the consultant, is referred to the consultant. And then the contractor is the mind. Contractor is the mind. Now, if the buddhi wants to execute things, that is the consultant has to execute things according to the desire of the client. That is why consultant is put through. And then he has been asked to choose a contractor who will work according to his directions. But the contractor is always trying to cut corners. And the best way for him to cut corners is to bribe the consultant. So when the mind can influence the intelligence, then it will not work for the benefit of the owner, but it will work for the benefit of themselves. Therefore, all the projects, all the bridges and the roads which are built, which collapses, you can clearly see there is a collaboration between the consultant and the contractor, and the result is suffering. So the mind and the intelligence, when they collaborate, not in a positive way, then there is a collapse. But if the intelligence does not allow the mind to contaminate or to cut corners, then that project always becomes successful. So mind can influence the intelligence. So the influences has to come from a higher mode, not from a lower mode. Therefore, mind is represented through intelligence. The buddhi is a consultant. I wish that you should do like this. If you don't do like this, I will not take responsibility. Then it becomes your responsibility. Any collapse, any problem happens, first one who's to be put as a, what you call, responsible is the contractor, because he executed it. Similarly, if there is any disturbance, if you go to the hospital, they only tell your mind is having a problem. You have a mental problem. Nobody till now told me that you have an intellectual problem. Has any doctor or any hospital, anybody diagnosed you have an intellectual problem? They only said mental problem. So who is more important, mind or intelligence? So do you understand this, Mataji, now?
Yes, Prabhuji.
It's hard to say this point, to accept with our experience, but this is the fact. So therefore it is referred here that way. But Krishna says something interesting in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, verses number 8 and 9. He says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante ma. Iti matva. Those who understand, engage in my worship with all their intelligence. So the word matva refers to that which has been accepted by the mind. The qualification of the mind, we said acceptance and rejection. If the mind doesn't accept, even if intelligence wants to do something, it would not be successful. Similarly, the next verse says, Mat chitta mad gata prana bodhayantah parasparam katayantascha mam nityam tushyanti charamanti cha. There also, mat chitta. So the chitta, there, contaminated consciousness, the contamination which is there predominantly in the mind, that mind gets contaminated. Intelligence reflects that contamination. So mat chitta madgata prana, that mind which is always in me and whose life is myself, or who breathe their life air because of me or for my sake, they engage in discussions between each other and they enjoy the highest bliss. That is referred. So always here we should know that mind in this perspective is considered to be superior. The perfection of intelligence is attained when one becomes fixed in the activities of Krishna consciousness. Again, fixed in the activities of Krishna consciousness requires mind and it requires engagement. By the proper use of intelligence, what is the proper use of intelligence? Able to train the mind. That is the proper use of intelligence. Once Krishna consciousness is expanded, Krishna consciousness here is again chitta. And the ultimate expansion of consciousness, that is the highest perfection of consciousness, is Krishna consciousness. So you can see the function of the mind in every perspective. That means the mode of goodness is the first wife, Jait. And whereas the others are its subordinates. So now probably you will understand why. The role of the Jait, since if you are in a joint family, you know what it means, right?
Prabhuji, like
Samshayo.
smarana means that is mind. Antakale cha mameva smaran mukta kale means the smarana comes from mind or intelligence.
It has to come from
Mind.
mind.
Mind only.
Yes. You don't meditate by intelligence. You meditate by mind.
Okay.
Right?
Thank you.
Samshayo atha viparyasho nischaya smritirevacha. Now comes buddhi. What is buddhi's function is explained here. Samshaya, doubts, misapprehension. Misapprehension means not clear in understanding. Understanding is a faculty of buddhi. Then correct apprehension. Memory. Memory is part of. Now we can, is memory is referred here as smriti, but this is basically the function of the mind. Now, how I will tell you? Like, I will give you this example so that you can actually digest it. We are having 3 wives for false ego. Jade, Madhyam and Kanishta. Okay? So, the Madhyam is sometimes close with Kanishta and sometimes favorable for Jade. Correct? So, the Jade's influence on the Madhyama is very strong. So, this Smarana, which is actually coming from the mind, is strong on the Madhyama, which is intelligence. And then the sleep is coming from ignorance, choti wali. Choti wali, beach wali ko bol rahi hai. That is called sleep. Okay? As determined by their different functions are said to be the distinct characteristics of intelligence. Because she is Madhyama, she doesn't want to have panga with the jade and she doesn't want to give up her choti. That is why the intelligence is fixed in that position. Is that clear? What kind of a complications here we are in this material world? Huh? ना बड़े वाले से जमता है ना छोटे वाले से जमता है जिएंगे तो कैसे जिएंगे but what to do, we got this body and this is how we have to live. So Kapila is telling, and yet he is saying, oh mother, you are very intelligent, remember this. So doubt is one of the important functions of intelligence. Har time there are some people who are always doubting, so that means they're very sharp in intelligence. Blind acceptance of something does not give evidence of intelligence. I actually relish this particular chapter because I approach this chapter like this. But if you don't approach the chapter like this, then life is gone. You will just get bewildered. So I like to really read this and understand this in this way. So please excuse me for that. May your mind cooperate with me. Therefore, the word samshaya is very important in order to cultivate intelligence. One should be doubtful in the beginning. Therefore, athatho brahma jigyasa. But doubting is not very favorable when information is received from the proper source. When you know that Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, then you should not have doubt. Before coming to know to Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, you should have athatho brahma jigyasa. That's the point Prabhupada is driving straight into it. The Lord says that doubting the words of authority is the cause of destruction. So even after telling to so many times that please accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, still people worship Ganapati as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is because their doubts have not been cleared. So, Pramana, Viparyaya, Vikalpa, Nidra, Smrityaha. These are the qualities or the characteristics of intelligence. Pramana refers to doubt, and then to clarify the doubt. Viparyaya, different options. Vikalpa, looking for something other than this, deliberation. Nidra, sleep, and Smriti, memory, are all referred to as intelligence. In fact, it's very difficult to separate these 3 modes under any time. You cannot sometimes say, sometimes Madhyama could be very strong also, and he can subdue the elder one and the younger one also. Therefore, these modes of material nature, as explained in the 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it says always there is a competition between them. And therefore, sometimes this is higher, sometimes that is lower, sometimes the combination. Why this is happening? because there is a competition. So even though we may say being in the Sattva Guna is favorable only, that's how we are saying. During Sattva Guna as the predominant factor, then many things become favorable for developing Krishna consciousness. But for the one who is passionate, goodness becomes a difficulty for him. Like the soldier on the battlefield, if he's having Sattva Guna, he will not even lift his rifle also. For him, what is required is that of passion. So according to the circumstances and the process that you are following, these three different balances have to take place. And these three are also represented in Ayurveda as Kapha, Vata and Pitta. Shruti means memory and Swapa means sleep. Sleep is also necessary to keep intelligence in working order. Just like sleep is the time when there is maintenance going on. Like for example, you switched on your grinder. Can you run your grinder 24/7? So what do? You have to switch off. You have to pull it off. So it also indicates that intelligence means there is headaches. Why headache? Because it's overused. There is heat. And therefore you have to cool down. So now you understand how these things are related. When you keep on thinking, the mind is also engaged and intelligence is also contemplating. The result is the brain gets heated. And then you get migraine. This is the result. Okay? So those people who suffer from migraine, their intelligence is superactive and their mind is not cooperating. That's the only reason why migraine happens. Okay? So please think. These are some of the aspects of analytical study of intelligence as described both by Patanjali Yoga system and the Sankhya philosophy of Kapila Deva. Now the third aspect of the ignorance is being described here. Egoism in the mode of passion produces two kinds of senses, the senses for acquiring knowledge and the senses of action. The senses of action depend on the vital energy and the senses for acquiring knowledge depend on intelligence. So vital energy refers to prana, prana vayu. Prana vayu is also an important element for the function of the body. It has been explained in the previous verses that mind is the product of ego in goodness and the function of the mind is acceptance and rejection according to desire. But here, intelligence is said to be the product of ego in passion. That is, distinction between mind and intelligence. Mind is a product of egoism in goodness and intelligence is a product of egoism in passion. The desire to accept something and reject something is a very important factor of the mind. Since mind is a product of mode of goodness, it is fixed upon the Lord of the mind, Aniruddha, and then the mind can be changed to Krishna consciousness. It is stated by Narottama Dasa that we always have desires. Desire cannot be stopped. But if we transfer our desires to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the perfection of life. And then he goes on to say, desire has to be purified. In the beginning, this purification process is carried out by the order of the spiritual master. So the process of training the mind and intelligence is mentioned. As far as intelligence is concerned, it is clearly stated here that it is a product of egoism and passion. By practice, one comes to the point of mode of goodness. And by surrendering or fixing the mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one becomes a great personality or Mahatma. Now there is some interesting point coming in the next one. When the egoism and ignorance is agitated by the sex energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the subtle element sound is manifested. So these are something which are required to be understood and taken as that is, because that's the way how this knowledge is imparted. It appears from this verse that all objects of our sense gratification are the products of egoism and ignorance, like sex pleasure or any of those kind of things is product of ignorance. This aspect of ignorance, because it keeps one to remain on the bodily conscious and forget that he's a spirit soul. So these actions, these thoughts, these desires, which is all impelled by the mode of ignorance, is making one to forget his original constitutional position. That is how the ignorance mode acts. By the agitation of the element of egoism in ignorance, the first thing produced was sound, which is the subtle form of ether. It is stated also in the Vedanta Sutra that sound is the origin of all objects of material possession, and that by sound one can also dissolve this material existence. So what is this material existence to be dissolved? Means the consciousness by which you either engage in the mode of ignorance more and more, thinking that you are the body and to exploit the body. That's what is referred here as dissolving the material existence. Anavritti Shabdat means liberation by sound. The entire material manifestation began from sound. So manifestation means something which has a form. So that forms of variety of the varieties within the creation is coming from the mode of ignorance. Rather, now we can say when we say as the forms means something gross. All the grossly things are coming from the mode of ignorance. And also can end the material entanglement. That means the reverse process. If it has a particular potency, the particular sound capable of doing this is the transcendental vibration of Hare Krishna. So therefore, why are we chanting? We are chanting this Mahamantra so that we can get delivered back into our original existence. That is mentioned here. It is said that from sound, the ether became manifested. Ether refers to the space. And that the air became manifested from ether, Vayu. How the ethereal sky comes from sound, how the air comes from sky, and how fire comes from air will be explained later on. Later on in the sense, either in this chapter or later in the Bhagavatam. That's what it means. Sound is the cause of the sky, and sky is the cause of Srotram, the ear. This is the sense organ. The ear is the first sense for receiving knowledge. So, behind the organ ear, there is a sense of hearing, and behind the sense of hearing is the sound. That's how the transmission goes. One must give oral reception to any knowledge one wants to receive, either material or spiritual. Therefore, Srotram is very important. So we also have Srotram, Srotriyam Brahmanistam is a word that is used, an aphorism, which says, it says, Tasmat Gurum Evabi Gache, Srotriyam Brahmanistam. That's a word that is used. How one gets into spiritual consciousness is through oral reception. In the material world, we manufacture many things for our material comfort simply by hearing. They are already there, but just by hearing, one can transform them. If we want to build a very high skyscraper, this does not mean that we have to create it. The materials for the skyscraper, wood, metal, earth, etc., are already there. But we make our intimate relationship with those already created material elements by hearing how to utilize them. Therefore, the Lord gave this instruction, Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaye, to Brahma, so that what is already existing, he will use that and he will engineer them to make into manifested creation. Persons who are learned and who have true knowledge define sound as that which conveys the idea of an object, indicates the presence of a speaker, screened from our view, and constitutes the subtle form of ether. So I will take you now to the slideshow. This is how the whole chapter is going on. I hope you had some clarity in understanding them. Yesterday we had seen up to this point. So we had done up to 34 now in the verses. We were talking about the sound. Sound is key to spirituality. All material objects, as referred here, all material objects, including the ethereal sky, emerge from sound, which forms the basis of both material and spiritual life. Hearing is crucial for acquiring knowledge, as both material advancement and spiritual growth begin with proper hearing. Sound defines the objects. Sound conveys the idea of an object and confirms the presence of a speaker, even when not seen. Vedic knowledge received by hearing Shruti is considered a Paurusha, meaning it originates from the Supreme Lord, not any material being, making it flawless. Receiving Vedic knowledge through disciplic succession ensures the transmission of perfect divine wisdom, free from human defects. The ethereal element sky accommodates the internal and external activities of living entities, because everything that happens is within a space, ether, including the mind, senses, and vital air. Although these forms are subtle and invisible to the naked eye, internally this is reflected in the circulation of the air and blood, while externally it involves the invisible forms of sense objects, that is tanmatra. Modern technology like television transmission demonstrates how subtle forms can be transmitted through the ether, illustrating the role of the ethereal element. This verse highlights how subtle forms manifest into tangible elements, air, fire, water, and earth, and how psychological actions, thinking, feeling, and willing occur within ethereal existence. A classical example that can be done here is in this way. How many of you have an experience of doing a money transaction on the internet? Did you give your physical money to somebody? So what did you give? Don't give me your ID and credentials. I did not ask that. Okay. So what you did is simply a ethereal transaction. Your physical money. Now you said, my son, you are living in other part of the world. I'm sending you money, but you did not send money. But also you sent money. Why? When he could withdraw the money sent by you and said, Mama, I received it. Correct? So when in our experience, we can see and use the ethereal way of transferring gross products, do you think Krishna's greater intelligence of creating these elements will not have these things? It's logical. When we tiny little people think that we have a tons of brain and tons of mind with us can do this, we are only using what is existing. An internet has to go through the sound waves and electrical waves to reach from your device right into the sky to reach a satellite, and the satellite has to retransmit to your son's or your children's device, in between through the banking network, and then the transaction can happen in such fractions of minutes or whatever is the time factor there. And do you think this greater intelligence of someone who has created this ether, who has created the ability to transmit things in the subtle forms, does not have these things? So if we can appreciate that, then how can we neglect Krishna's ability to do and perform things? How he can accommodate everything. So we, men of this world, thinking that we are advancing, We are only just, what you call, I would say, one who doesn't have any gratitude for Krishna. We don't give 1 dirham, Krishna, you please take it with you, or 1 rupee to you for this transaction. Please keep it. And may this help you for your next project. We don't even do that, right? But Krishna is not charging us. But Krishna charges so much, unbelievable. He charges us through our karma. He makes us responsible for what we are doing. That is the charge he puts on us. You cannot escape. You cannot escape this surcharge, what he puts onto you. Okay? So be careful what we are doing. This is how you should actually think and understand Krishna's greater hands of instruments. The Bhagavad Gita also supports this idea, explaining how one's mental state at death shapes the form of the next birth, with subtle forms transforming into gross manifestation. So on my deathbed, I start to think that I should be the best of the billionaires in my next life. So that was my Antakalecha Mameva. So Mameva, I think only me, I only should become billionaire. That's called as Antakala Mameva. And because of that, what was the gross body that I thought took the subtle shape and gave me another gross body. So there is a transition that took place. And therefore, I became a billionaire in the circle of dogs on the street. That's how Krishna works with our karma. So, sense objects appearing in creation. Sound and ether. The first perceptible element is sound. Perceptible means even if it is not grossly seen, we can still perceive by hearing, which originates from the ethereal existence, sky. Sound is the first subtle element and the basis for further evolution. So everything has to have some space in which it has to exist. So therefore, first thing is to create the space. And after creating a space, then other things starts to get into formations. Touch and air. From sound, the subtle element of touch arises. So when we say Bhumirapo Analo Vayuhu Kam, that Kam is this space, ether. Form, sound, the subtle element of touch arises which manifests air. The sense of touch includes qualities like the softness, hardness, cold, and heat, all characteristics of air. Since each one is appearing as the son of the previous one, so the son has the qualities of the father, or the daughter has the qualities of the father and the mother. That's how these elements are evolving. Air's role, air facilitates movement, mixing and enables the function of all senses. It allows perception of sound, assists in circulation, and impacts the body's health. Fire and sight. From the interactions of the air and touch, fire, form, energy emerges, and the sense of sight develops. Fire is characterized by its light and the ability to reveal from form through color. This is how these material elements begin to manifest. From characteristics, form is perceived through dimension, quality, and individuality. It is understood by analytical study and interactions with the senses like taste and utility. Fire's functions. Fire is recognized by light, heat, and essential roles in digestion, cooking, counteracting cold, influences hunger, thirst, and the body's ability to process food. The sequence shows how each subtle element evolves into tangible forms and how the senses develop to interact with these forms, starting with sound and leading to more complex material manifestations like fire and form. So that's how creation is going on, with which we all interact. The sequence of appearance of elements in the creation. Further, taste and water. Through the interaction of the fire and visual sense, the subtle element of taste evolves, leading to the creation of water and the tongue, which perceives taste. Taste becomes varied, sweet, sour, salty, bitter, pungent, and astringent through contact with other substances. Characteristics of water. Water has essential functions such as moistening, sustaining life, softening, and so on. Similarly, the earth's characteristics are explained. All the qualities of the other elements such as sound, touch, form, taste, and smell, making it the foundation for all elements. It is the medium through which the Supreme Lord's forms can be manifested in physical objects, like statuses, which are not imaginary but based on scriptural descriptions. Whenever I read this particular slide or these characteristics, I remember about myself. When I had consulted one of the doctors who was also an astrologer, he said that, Prabhu, you have 10% of your great-grandfather's characteristic, 20% of your grandfather, 35% of your father, and the balance because of your previous karma. That is how you are made. So the earth, when it says sound, touch, form, taste, and smell, they are all father, grandfather, great-grandfather, and so on. So all of those characteristics are present in the generations next that come by. Therefore, the grossest form is earth, and the subtlest form of the earth is the sound. That's how the relationship should be seen. Each element has a corresponding sense. Has sky, touch has air, form has fire, taste has water, and smell has earth. These senses arise from the respective elements' distinct characteristics. Each element contains the qualities of its predecessor, culminating in the earth, which embodies the qualities of all elements. When the elements were in the unmixed state, that was in the state before creation, you can say Pradhana and Mahatattva state, Garbhodakasai Vishnu, along with the time, the modes and material energy entered the universe, initiating the manifestation of the material world. So even though all these ingredients and all their manifestations were there, but they were not interactive. The interaction has to take place by the super soul, by the spirit, which is Garbhodakasai Vishnu, and that's how the universes come into existence. Creation agitated by the Lord, just as in a human conception, material elements only become active when agitated by a life force. The universal creation is triggered by the Supreme Lord's entrance, causing matter to develop into the cosmic form, Virata Purusha. Now we are coming into that particular section of the chapter where Virata Purusha's emergence and his characteristics and his role are all described. So the Garbhodakasai Vishnu entering into the material universe is the cause for Virata Purusha's expansion. Universal structure. The universe is like an egg-shaped and layered with elements like water, fire, air, sky, each layer exponentially thicker than the previous. So thicker in the sense 10 times thicker than the previous ones. If earth is in the unit 1, then water is in unit 10, and the fire is unit 100, and then the air is in the unit 1000. Like that, these layers are exponentially thicker. These layers enclose the universe within which the universal form of the Lord Hari, representing the various planetary systems, exist. Virata Purusha as a worship form. For those unable to comprehend the transcendental form of the Supreme Lord, worship of the Virata Purusha is recommended. This form associates planetary systems with parts of the Lord's body, that is, Patala as the sole of his feet and Brahmaloka as his head. This is also explained in chapter 2 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2. So yesterday we had also seen some of these slides here. So within the universe, there are these 14 planetary systems, and these 14 planetary systems are referred to be beginning from the heel or the lower part of the Lord's feet up to the top of the tip of the head is what from the Patala, Loka to Satya Loka are said to be situated on this universal form of the Lord. So for the gross materialists who cannot appreciate the form of the Garbhodakasaya Vishnu or Vishnu or Krishna, for them, the Vedas recommend that you meditate on the Virata Rupa of the universe with all the 14 planetary systems, or if you have the ability to conceive these universes, imagining them to be within the human-like body of a personality, as the human have the lower part, their feet, and the upper tip as their head, within this are located these different planetary systems. That's how is the meditation recommended. And within these universes, the arrangement for all the lower planetary systems, the middle planetary disk, which is the earthly planet with all the 7 subterranean region. Then there is Nakshatra Mandala. Above that is the 4 Mahar, Jana, Tapa, and Satyaloka. And then all the different 7 layers of the material elements are covering. And this is how each and every universe is manifested. The Virata Purusha is an expansion of the Lord, but the original form is Krishna, Adi Purusha, or the original enjoyer. Though many Purusha avatars exist, like Garbhodakasai, Kshirodakasai, Krishna is the supreme original form. Like what we see, Krishna is the original form, from him comes the Mahavishnu, from him comes the Garbhodaka Vishnu, from him comes the Kshirodakasai Vishnu. Likewise, the inconceivable dimensions, the universe's vastness with layers that multiply in size by 10 times is beyond human comprehension. Even this description only applies to one universe, while there are countless others, many far larger, where Brahma may have multiple heads to manage the universe. This summary highlights the cosmic creation process, the layered structure of the universe, and the universal form of the Lord, emphasizing the Supreme Lord's inconceivable power and how even vast cosmic mounds stem. Now, this chapter is interesting to note, and what are all the different forms of the Lord that exist within one universe is explained. He says, there are many far larger universes. That means like what you see here as the egg shape, if this whole egg shape is considered to be as unit 1, there are other egg shapes which are unit 10, unit 20, unit 50, unit 100, like that. That means not that each and every universe is of the same dimension. Their dimensions varies. That is the first gross difference that is referred. And where Brahma may have multiple heads, the larger the universe, more number of heads are there for Brahma. More number of heads simply means that he has a supercomputer and he has multiple storage devices. Each head is a storage device. That's how you should understand for the sake of his creation. And also it says that within this creation, the super soul, which is Garbhodaka Vishnu, exists, and then his expansion as Virata Purusha also exists. That's how this material creation is described. The Virata Purusha, or universal form of the Lord, manifests gradually, similar to how a child develops in the womb. Now, as I see, we are already 3 minutes past our time to end this session. I have about 12 verses to cover for today's point. Is it okay that you can extend the session by about 15, 20 minutes max to cover this? Is it agreeable to all of you? What do you say, Pratadara Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I have a class. I'll listen to the recordings, Prabhuji. I have class now.
Perfect. Go
Yes,
ahead, Lars.
thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Yes. What about for the rest? Is it
Some of us
another
are in
50?
Singapore and Malaysia. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I
I want to
personally,
just make. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
I can say, Prabhuji, but I'm not sure about Damayanti Mataji if she's okay, because it is like 10:33, right? 10:30 p.m.
Oh, okay, I don't want to then disturb others. Okay, so we will take up this in our next week session, as now we are talking about Virata Purusha, another topic in itself, which runs for about 10-12 verses. And that's also very important significance in understanding the aspects of fundamental nature. So we can take it up from in the next class. Also, for your better understanding, please go through the second canto, second chapter, to understand more about Virata Purusha, and also the 6th chapter of the second canto to understand more about Virata Purusha. That will help you to sustain in this chapter as well. And in many places, these Virata Purusha are explained. Then there is also many places where different aspects of meditation is explained. In chapter 28, I would be circulating you a notes. I don't know if I've not circulated it yet so far. Wherein this is chapter 26 we are going in. So 27, chapter 27, you will find the comparisons of different aspects of the universal form and then aspects of the meditation. How within the Bhagavatam, the concept of Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan are all included within this creation, and the descriptions are compared and given to you. That will be helpful for your academic interests as well. Okay, thank you. We would conclude it here. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta koti vaishnav vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Upasthit Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Nithai Gaur Sitanath Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. I hope you enjoyed the creation and the fundamental principles.
Yes, Prabhu, we
Yes,
did.
Prabhuji.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
You made it very
Thank
funny.
you.
Funny example.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Actually,